The X-Trial of Nations returns to its spiritual home in Nice for the 2018 edition. It's X-Trial's equivalent of a World Cup, with representatives of the discipline's leading countries competing for national pride and FIM medals. Top 5 ranked nations in the X-Trial world come together in Nice to tackle the 2018 X-Trial of Nations, 4 of them aiming for their first title and bidding to dethrone favourite Spain. Germany are the event's outsiders. Bottom of the pile in 2017, they are further weakened in the absence of Jarmo Robran, and their young riders approach the latest competition as an opportunity to further grow in experience. The main difference for us compared to last year is that I have a new teammate. Jarmo couldn't make it because of a back injury, so this time I will be riding with Max Fowler. I've had a year more experience, although this year I have only ridden at X-Trial Strasbourg, so I think our position will be pretty similar. Italy, France and Great Britain each field unchanged lineups compared to 2017, meaning that the close fights between them last year should be repeated in the latest edition. After recording a podium finish in 2016, Matteo Gratarola was joined by Luca Petrella last year. The Italians hope to make it back into the top 3 with an additional year of experience for their youngster. In 2016, we had a great race and managed to take 3rd position. Returning to Nice, of course, we expect a lot and we hope for the best possible result again. As for 3rd position, or even better, who knows? France were relegated to 3rd position in pole by just a single point last year, and their rivalry with Great Britain has been the focus of recent editions of the X-Trial of Nations. But after an excellent season for Benoit Bincaz and hoping to take advantage of the experience of Alexandre Ferrer, France aim to move past the battle for silver to challenge for gold in 2018. Of course, it's important for France to put in a good result this evening, being not only on the podium, but either 2nd or even 1st in front of Spain. For me, hearing the public cheering us and encouraging us up the obstacles will certainly help us. It's really enjoyable, and that's why we want to shine tonight in the Palais Nikaia. It will be far from easy for Great Britain to defend their world number 2 ranking, with France and Italy in particular pushing for a place on the podium. But James Dable and Jack Price target a place in the final and the opportunity that goes with it to challenge Spain for victory.
You know, with Toni still been injured a little bit, not 100%, and you know, with Miquel, it's his first Trial of Nations indoor. Maybe this year we have a little bit more of an opportunity, I think, but the same for, you know, France and them teams as well. So, you know, you could say that the French have a little bit of an advantage being at home, but also that could work in our favour because they have extra pressure, you know, to do well in front of the home crowd. So trials is always difficult to say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We just have to, like I say, give it 100% and see what we can do.
Undefeated Spain have the highest ranked riders from the 2018 X-Trial World Championship, with 2 of the top 5 overall, including the 12 times world champion Toni. The 2018 title winner returns after missing X-Trial Budapest through injury and bids for his 7th X-Trial of Nations title. It's an event that I enjoy, so I want to be here. I've only missed one before through injury. It was too tight to ride in Budapest last week because I didn't want to run the risk of repeating what happened in Paris, but now we'll try to make sure today is different. The intensity of today's race is different to a normal World Championship round, but the objective is the same, to go out and win. The X-Trial of Nations comes to France for the 5th time since its inauguration in 2002, with a 4th visit to Nice's Palais Nikaia. 5 different nations have made it onto the podium in the last 4 editions of the championship, and 4 of them are represented in 2018. So the 4,500 fans packing in to watch their heroes can expect another close-fought contest for the top 3 rankings. 3 rounds of sections will decide the 2018 X-Trial of Nations, with the points cumulative during the night and the totals after each round determining starting order for the next. The bottom 3 teams eliminated after round 2, the early stages of the competition were critical in determining the podium places. Outsiders Germany got off to a disappointing start, Max Fowler on his X-Trial debut suffering 3 failures in his opening 3 outings of the night. Franz Kadlec salvaged the only completed section of the lap for Germany, who recorded 25 of a possible 30 marks and finished round 1 12 marks behind their nearest rivals at the bottom of the pile. Italy put in a stronger first lap of the course with a 13-mark score. 2 failed sections in 3 for Luca Petrella stopped them from running the lead 3 nations closer, and they finished round 1 8 marks back from the podium, pace in 4. But 3 strong rides from Matteo Gratarola, becoming the first rider successfully through sections 1 and 4 and the first clean through section 6, left the Italians comfortably clear of Germany behind them and targeting further progress in round 2. France were third out to tackle the sections, reflecting their bronze medal finish in 2017, and they set a new provisional leading pace with just 4 drop marks from 6 sections. Benoit Bincaz notched 3 of those 4, but became one of only 2 riders successfully through section 2, and France could have finished the lap with an even better total, but for an error from the youngster in section 4. Alexandre Ferrer dropped his only mark of the lap in section 6, where Matteo Gratarola had ridden clean, but it was nonetheless an impressive first appearance of the evening for the host nation. Great Britain dropped marks in just 1 of the 6 round 1 sections, but that was enough to drop them behind France. Jack Price failed section 2, leaving Great Britain on 5, and the home duo, by contrast, had managed the first lap without suffering any fiascos. From there, it was about minimising the deficit for the reigning silver medalists, James Dable putting in an excellent lap with 3 cleans, becoming the first to do so in section 4. Great Britain and France were separated by just a single mark, just as they were in 2017, but this time with the hosts in the driving seats. Spain was still to come though, and they duly took the lead after a nervous moment early on the lap. A single mark score for Toni in section 1, where Alexandre Ferrer of France and James Dable of Great Britain had been clean, left the reigning champions with just 3 marks to play with on the remainder of the lap. But from there, the favourites were error-free. Miquel Gelabert putting in 3 cleans on his X-Trial of Nations debut and helping Spain to a 3-mark advantage after round 1. Spain and Great Britain each dropped marks in just 1 of the 6 sections. France consistent enough though to sit second after round 1. The top 3 teams had set up their podium challenge with a clear advantage in the first of 3 phases of competition. Round 2 gets underway with a revised starting order: Germany, Italy, Great Britain, France and Spain. The German duo first out into the sections, Franz Kadlec and Max Fowler, who managed to salvage just 5 marks from the first lap, hoping to do better in round number 2. Max Fowler getting underway in section number 1. Fowler will be riding 1, 3 and 5. Kadlec 2, 4 and 6 with a relay in between, of course. Changeover for these riders. Max Fowler then first up for Germany, making his X-Trial debut here tonight. First came to prominence in the 2016 Trial 125 category, finishing second in the world. He's already amassed 1 mark here just for leaning on that landing. Germany 5th place on well adrift last year in their first ever appearance, when they became the 8th different nation to have competed in the X-Trial of Nations. And getting off to a poor start in round number 1. They have marks to make up here in round 2 as they attempt to chase down Italy for their first top 4 finish. Fowler so far so good, but he's lost it there. And off the side of the rock, down to a 5-mark score. And frustratingly for Fowler, he had used up over a minute in that section 1. Hands over the baton now to Franz Kadlec, 20-year-old from Bavaria, making his second X-Trial of Nations appearance here tonight for Germany. Part of that duo that finished at the back last season. 2 drop marks there. Mark taken for leaning on the landing as he just clacked the sump into that ridge you can see there. At the moment he's resting his front wheel on it as he builds up for the main step of this section number 2. 5 marks scored first time out by Max Fowler. Kadlec is going right up close to that step. rather than trying to take a run up to it. He can't afford to drop too many more marks because he's already on 2. 2 more drop marks would result in a failure here. Big moment for Franz Kadlec, and he can't get up. He's down to a 5-mark score. Second consecutive failure early in round 2 for Germany, who move on to 10 for the lap. 35 in total. Tough night so far. Baptism of fire for Max Fowler and Franz Kadlec, who made an appearance earlier on in the season in the World Championship at X-Trial Strasbourg. Has not got off to a good start here tonight either. Now on to section number 3. Max Fowler rode in the Trial 2 World Championship last season, struggled at that level, and he's really struggling here tonight. Yet to get out of a first section. What can he do here in section number 3? He's most of the way up the main step, but he's had to hook the front wheel over. He didn't get up as far as he wanted, and now he's got himself in an awkward position, and that's a failure because he'd already dropped 2 marks for leaning and footing, and then takes another. A bit of a scrappy moment there for Max Fowler at the top of the section. So Germany now move on to a lap total of 15, an overall total of 40, and any more than 3 drop marks in the remainder of this lap will now leave them consigned to the basement position. Franz Kadlec into section number 4 then, just slipping backwards there and conceding a mark. A great start then for Franz Kadlec, making his way through section number 4, and that's more drop marks, and it's a failure for Franz Kadlec, given by the section observer. I want a harsh one, but Kadlec is out of section number 4, and Germany will finish at the bottom of the pile here tonight, regardless of their efforts in sections 5 and 6. Kadlec hands back over to Max Fowler. This will be his final appearance of the evening. Let's see if he can get out of his first section here tonight. Section number 5, his 6th and final appearance. Max Fowler looking for any result other than a 5 really, but it's a 5 he gets. Down he goes, and into the swimming pool for good measure goes Max Fowler, a wry smile on his face. It's been a tough night for him. 6 failures out of 6. Franz Kadlec has already managed 4 failures out of his 5 appearances, and he will be next up, the last section of the night. And the Germans haven't done particularly well on time, considering the volume of sections they failed in round number 2. They're not in a great position on time for this section number 6, so Kadlec needs to get on with it here. His assistant waiting at the top of the section, the traditional French section, the tower. Nice, a regular venue, of course, in the X-Trial of Nations. Germany, in only their 2nd appearance in this competition, finish out at the back. One of only 2 teams with a new lineup this season. Kadlec, of course, making his 2nd appearance, but Max Fowler coming in to replace Jarmo Robran. Hasn't changed their fate, though, here tonight. Finishing at the back last season, they finish at the back once again here tonight. Kadlec in real trouble now in terms of time. He's making his way through section 6 quite nicely, but he's labouring over it in terms of speed. 6 minutes for 6 sections, remember. Kadlec drops a mark there for leaning. Less than 10 seconds now remaining. There's no way that Kadlec is going to make it out, surely, of this one, section number 6. Waiting for the klaxon, which now sounds, and it's a 6th consecutive failure for Germany in round number 2. They make it out of just 1 of their 12 sections here tonight. A maximum of 30 marks dropped in round number 2, and 55 out of a possible 60 in the night overall. Disappointing performance for Germany. They would have been hoping to remain closer to, in particular, Italy in 4th position, but it wasn't to be here tonight. Italy next up then, guaranteed at least 4th position. Their target will be to take a podium place, and they must finish on a maximum of 23 marks on this lap to remain in podium contention. Matteo Gratarola into section number 1. This one was failed by Max Fowler, remember, although it was failed later on in the section. Matteo Gratarola, the 30-year-old, making his 4th X-Trial of Nations appearance. He's got that slightly wrong there. He's dropped a mark for leaning. Just approached that rock in an awkward position. Senior rider of the Italian team, Matteo Gratarola, Plenty of experience in the discipline. 10 previous X-Trial World Championship appearances and an X-Trial of Nations bronze medalist in 2016. Gratarola just 1 mark so far. The rock that caught out Max Fowler still to come. Gratarola takes another drop mark there for footing. Left foot goes down much to his frustration as he shouts out in annoyance. So Matteo Gratarola has already dropped 2. Maximum of 1 more mark to play with in this section. He's managed to make it onto the rock that caught out Max Fowler, and Gratarola should be the first rider through in section number 1. 2 drop marks means that Italy move on to a total of 15. Marks are cumulative during the evening, so round 1 and round 2 added together, as is traditionally in the X-Trial of Nations. But this year we have a final for the top 2 nations. Luca Petrella, early on in section number 2, he's got himself a little bit stuck there on the top of one of these uprights, and he drops 1 mark for footing and 1 mark for leaning, but manages to make it up in the end, Luca Petrella. Biggest step of this section still to come, though. First he's got the descent. That costs him a mark on leaning, so he's got nothing to play with now for this main step, and this is where we saw Franz Kadlec fail, remember, here in section number 2. 2 marks dropped early on, a third dropped on the descent. 1 more mark and it'll be a failure here for Petrella, and down he goes anyway. Can't make it up the step, and Italy drop a first fiasco of round number 2. That moves them on to a total of 7 from 2 sections and 20 overall. Luca Petrella with 2 sections in a row here. He'll also feature in section number 5. Matteo Gratarola will return for sections 4 and 6. Germany failed here, remember, with Max Fowler in section number 3, but no such problems for Luca Petrella, who pivots over on the sump, drops a mark for leaning there. 19-year-old who made his X-Trial of Nations debut last season, returning in this unchanged Italian team for 2018. Drops another mark there for leaning. So it's 2 marks now for Luca Petrella, with the final elements of this section still to come. He's got to be careful here. He won't want a second consecutive failure, but that's exactly what he's going to get, because he drops a mark for leaning and a mark for footing on the final step. He was already on 2, so it's a failure in section 3 for Luca Petrella. Italy on 12 for the lap. Germany were on 15 at this stage in the lap. Of course, it makes little difference because there's no way that Italy can finish behind Germany. But the Italians were aiming to keep their scores as low as possible, with Great Britain, France and Spain still to come. Matteo Gratarola a little bit wayward there, slipping further to the left than he wanted to go. Gratarola making his second X-Trial appearance of the campaign, having participated as a nominated rider at the season-opening X-Trial Vendée. Oh, he's got it wrong. Gratarola comes down. That was unexpected. Matteo Gratarola, curse of the commentator, just as I was explaining his experience in the sport, down he goes. Misjudgment in section number 4. And Italy are in real trouble now. Remember that they have a maximum of 23 marks to play with on this lap if they want to remain in podium contention. They're already on 17 with 2 sections remaining. Luca Petrella, down he goes, second rider into the pool. After it claimed its German victim, it claims Luca Petrella in section number 5. So that means that coming into section 6, Matteo Gratarola must complete this section and rely on Great Britain failing every section to have a chance of a podium place. It's looking pretty remote now, and I suspect we're going to have a 3-way battle for the podium places between Great Britain, France and Spain. Any drop marks in this one, section number 6, and Italy's night will be over in 4th position. They won't qualify through to the grand final anyway because of marks already accrued. They can't possibly catch France or Spain now. Gratarola working through well here in section number 6. It's been a generally solid performance from Gratarola. Just 1 fiasco in 5 sections so far. 7 marks to his name for the 2 rounds of competition. He's looking much stronger in terms of time compared to Germany. Matteo Gratarola should have time to make it through here in section number 6. Strong individual performance from him here tonight. 10 marks dropped from 6 completed sections. Personally, Matteo Gratarola is through in section 6. As I said, only the 2nd completed section of the lap for Italy, who crash out of the competition at the round 2 stage. and will now rely on 6 consecutive failures for Great Britain to give them an unlikely podium place. So it looks as though Germany are settled in 5th and Italy settled in 4th. And now on to the big 3 from the opening round. Great Britain, France and Spain, who were covered by just 4 marks in round number 1. Jack Price will line up in sections 1, 3 and 6 for Great Britain. First section of round number 2 for Price, the 20-year-old from Huddersfield, making his 2nd X-Trial of Nations appearance. Great Britain only need to get through 1 section to guarantee a place on the podium for this season. Price could do that here in section number 1. But he doesn't, he's down to a 5. Misjudgment there, and you can see him desperately trying to haul the bike back to where he wanted. So frustrated was he with that result that he almost forgot to head over to James Dable and hand over to the team leader to start section number 2. James Dable was perfect in round number 1. 31-year-old from Leeds making his 8th X-Trial of Nations appearance here tonight. Now just 1 cap away from the all-time record held currently by Albert Cabastan of Spain. James Dable, the 2nd most experienced X-Trial rider in tonight's lineup, with 44 appearances and 3 career podium finishes in X-Trial World Championship events. Nice work so far in this section from Dable. Remember that we've seen 2 riders fail it. Dable getting up the first step without dropping any marks, and then the descent on the back wheel against that ridge to avoid dropping any marks for leaning. Dable's still clean for the night as a whole. This is his 4th appearance of the evening. James Dable has been the standout star for Great Britain so far and continues on nicely here in section number 2, still without a drop mark. What can he do in the latter stages? This is where it starts to get tricky, a little bit more technical in the latter part of the section. Major steps early on, and then it's the technical elements later on in this section number 2. But Dable has performed immaculately once again, showing real form in the latter stages of this X-Trial campaign, finishing 4th place last weekend at X-Trial Budapest, his best result since the first event of the 2018 calendar year. Handing back over to Jack Price for section number 3. Step here that's caught out a couple of the riders so far. Great Britain with that clean from James Dable last time out, a guaranteed a place on the podium. But they need to keep their scores as low as possible, knowing that France and Spain are still to come, and they're targeting a place in the top 2 here tonight, Great Britain. 1 mark drop for leaning there for Jack Price. Moving on to a personal tally of 6 for the lap. He's through in section number 3. It is 2 drop marks in the end, and that moves Great Britain onto a total of 12 as Price hands over to James Dable for section number 4. Permanent rider in the X-Trial World Championship this season, James Dable. Disappointing with just a 7th place ranking in the end, behind 2 of the nominated event riders. Showing tonight this is an opportunity to recover from some of that disappointment this season. Section number 4, failed by 2 riders so far. James Dable looking to become the first rider through, just as he did in section 2 that had been failed by Kadlec and Petrella. He was clean there, and he's clean so far in section 4. Another good ride from James Dable. On the back wheel in section 4, super stuff once again from James Dable, who remains clean from 5 appearances. Great Britain on 7 for the lap, all scored by Jack Price, and 12 overall. So far so good for Great Britain, whose focus turns to a challenge for the place in tonight's grand final. Section number 5 has been failed by Max Fowler and Luca Petrella. Now it's over to James Dable. He's further than either of those 2, but he's down as well. His first drop marks of the night, and it's a fiasco in section 5 for James Dable. Disappointment for him, because up until that stage, he had been immaculate. Just missing out on a clean round number 2 after a clean round 1, James Dable. Now it's back over to Jack Price. And he too is down in his final appearance of round number 2. And the lap has really turned on its head in the latter stages here for Great Britain, who finished that lap on 17 and move on to an overall total of 22. Good enough to beat Italy and Germany, quite comfortably so as well. But will it be good enough to hold on ahead of France and Spain? 22 marks is the overall target total then for France to beat, having finished on just 4 marks in round number 1. They are the penultimate team to take to the arena floor here in this second round. Alexandre Ferrer, first up for them, the 28-year-old former world number 5, and ever present for the French team since 2012, making his 5th Extra Isle of Nations appearance here tonight. 2 marks, the best total we've seen from anyone in this section 1 so far. Max Fowler and Jack Price both failing it. Matteo Gratarola dropping 2 marks for Italy. 1 mark drop there for leaning for Alexandre Ferrer. France runners-up in 2016 with this same partnership. Closest any team has come to dethroning Spain in the last decade. They finished just 6 marks behind last time out here in the Palais Nikaia. Hoping to do similarly here this evening. Ferrer just dropping a mark there for footing. A nervous start for France, but they've got through section 1 better than Great Britain. And that's critical for them, remember, as they aim for a place in the top 2 and progression through to tonight's grand final. Great Britain at this stage then were on 10, France are on 6, after going 3 marks better than Britain in section number 1. Now it's over to Benoit Bincaz, the youngster, 21-year-old, a podium finisher on both of his Extra Isle of Nations appearances with France so far, having made his debut with the silver medal in 2016. Good work on the landing there from Bincaz. James Dable paved the way here in section 2 because he was clean. France aiming to match that then to maintain their 4-mark advantage at this stage over Great Britain as they bid for qualification. A single drop mark for leaning there. You could hear the sump as Bincaz clacked into the side of the step on his way up, but he did make it up, and that's crucial. Dable having been clean here, Bincaz needs to keep scoring to a minimum. Now just 3 marks between the 2 teams at the same stage. Neat work in the latter stages though. Bincaz is out of section 2. It's a single drop mark compared to a clean for James Dable. France on 3 marks from this lap, from the opening 2 sections. Great Britain finished the lap, remember, on 17. Handing back over to Alexandre Ferrer now for section number 3. Jack Price recorded 2 marks in this one and got through it. Ferrer is clean so far. Drops 1 mark for leaning on the way down. He tried to do it on the back wheel, but he slightly misjudged it. So a first mark dropped on this section number 3 for Alexandre Ferrer. France still looking good in this one. Jack Price for Great Britain dropped 2 in the same section. And through goes Alexandre Ferrer. Just odd dabs here and there so far for France. 4 marks dropped in the first half of round number 2. They move on to 8 overall. Great Britain were on 12 at this stage. So completion of this section number 4 will guarantee France a place in the final, and therefore at least a silver medal here this evening. That must be the first target for them. That will surely be mission accomplished if they can manage it. Sections 5 and 6 were failed by Great Britain, which is what gives France an opportunity to claim their place in tonight's grand final. As early as section number 4, it's Benoit Bincaz, who's been the revelation of this 2018 season, who guarantees France a place in tonight's grand final with 2 minutes and 2 sections to spare in round number 2. Alexandre Ferrer out for his 6th appearance of the night, as France's attention turns to the battle with Spain. A single mark drop there for leaning for Alexandre Ferrer. No one, though, has made it through section 5 as yet. James Dable, the more experienced of the great British riders, failing this one. Ferrer is up on the back wheel. Brilliant moment for the French team. They've already secured their place in the top 2, and Alexandre Ferrer has got further than anyone so far in this one, section number 5. The crowd are behind him, and the section is behind him as well. A single drop mark in section 5. A superb performance on this lap from France so far. They've secured a silver medal, and that performance in section 5 was quite superb from Alexandre Ferrer. Benoit Bincaz couldn't make it up the steps in section 6 first time around, but he makes it up the second. Brilliant riding from him to be able to leap down successively. Toni style to give himself a second chance. And he's taking full advantage of it. France are under time pressure. If they don't manage to make the 6 sections in 6 minutes, it will be a failure in this one, section number 6, and that would be a shame because Benoit Bincaz is still clean so far, and the crowd are absolutely delighted with this performance. They know this is a massive result in round number 2 from France. Just a single drop mark in section 5 was excellent, and a clean in section 6 from Benoit Bincaz means that France finished the lap on just 5, and after round number 2 are still on a single-digit total. 9 marks from 12 completed sections. France are justifiably delighted with that. They really came alive in the latter stages of the lap. A clean in section 4, a single drop mark in section 5. Alexandre Ferrer, the first rider to get through that section, and Benoit Bincaz bringing the lap home under pressure. France finish round 2 on 9. And now it's over to Spain. France have certainly made sure that they remain in contention with a low-scoring lap. Spain, unbeaten in 11 attempts, turn to Toni, who will ride the opening 2 sections of round number 2. Then hand over to Miquel Gelabert for sections 3 and 4. Toni, who dropped a mark in this section in the other direction in round number 1, just took a glancing blow on the sump. Will be keen to avoid that this time around. Alexandre Ferrer dropped 2 marks for France in this section, and France are now the target with 9 drop marks. Great Britain with 22 will be the first hurdle to pass for Spain to secure their place in tonight's grand final. I don't think there's much doubt about that. Spain clean in section number 1 through Toni. The only X-Trial winner in this evening's lineup, Toni, the 57 times X-Trial winner. If he manages another clean here in section 2, that will confirm the elimination of Great Britain and guarantee us a Spain versus France grand final. Already seen one rider clean through this one, section 2, remember, James Dable for Great Britain, but the lap unravelled for them in the final 2 sections. That means that we're looking likely to see a Spain versus France grand final here tonight. Both still clean in section number 2. 6 times winner of this competition with Spain, returning tonight from 3 broken vertebrae, an injury that kept him out of X-Trial Budapest last week and also impacted on his scoring in Paris. Doesn't look as though it's impacting him here this evening. Spain clean in the opening 2 sections of round number 2 and are now guaranteed their place in the grand final, where they will take on France. But the marks are cumulative throughout the evening, so the remaining 4 sections of this lap still critical for Spain, who hand over to Miquel Gelabert for sections 3 and 4. Gelabert making his X-Trial of Nations debut in his first season as an X-Trial rider. Good performance from him in round number 1, and so far so good in section number 3, completed by both Jack Price and Alexandre Ferrer. Just a single mark, the best total so far. Gelabert, though, has got it wrong, and down he goes to a 5-mark score, and that really changes the complexion of this lap for Spain. They'd already made up 3 more marks on France in section number 1, and as Miquel Gelabert comes in to a second consecutive section, Spain are now on a total of 6. 5 marks for this lap is what France finished the whole lap on. So already France and Spain tied for round number 2. Spain still have the advantage as a result of their superior performance in round 1. But that advantage was a narrow one, and Spain need to minimise their errors in the remainder of this lap now. Miquel Gelabert, only the 6th different rider to represent Spain since 2002, such has been the predominance of their Beau Raga Cabestan trio. The introduction of one rider aged under 25 for each team in 2016, bringing new blood into the Spanish team for the first time since 2005. Jaime Busto was the winner with Toni last season. This year, Miquel Gelabert gets a call-up. Toni he's dropped a mark there for leaning. Section number 5, completed successfully by Alexandre Ferrer with just a single mark. Beau's already on a mark. Makes the decision to drop down rather than to leap all the way across as Ferrer did. Oh, more marks dropped for Toni, and down he goes! Toni fails section number 5, becomes the 4th rider to do so, and Spain will end round number 2 behind France. They've dropped 10 marks on this lap. France dropped 5 marks on the whole lap. Spain moving on to 11, compared to 9 for France at the end of this one, section number 6. So any further drop marks for Miquel Gelabert in section 6 will slip Spain further in arrears of the new leaders, France. Miquel Gelabert, the world number 5 after an excellent, if inconsistent, Extra World Championship season. Runner-up at Extra Strasbourg, one of 8 different podium finishers in 7 2018 events. It's been a campaign full of surprises. Well, we see another one here tonight. France lead us with the grand final to go, and there are only 5 sections in the grand final for Spain to try and recover. No mistake from Miquel Gelabert in section number 6, but it was his mistake in section number 3 that conceded the majority of Spain's advantage, and then a surprise failure for Toni in section number 5 that sees them drop behind. Well, we could be in for a surprise here tonight. We leave round number 2 with Great Britain confirmed in 3rd, Italy confirmed in 4th, and Germany confirmed in 5th. Those positions settled relatively early on. But the main surprise of round number 2, Spain dropping behind France. The knockout relay phase of the competition is completed, and we're down to 2 remaining teams to contest the gold medal in the 2018 X-Trial of Nations, and it couldn't be much closer. France lead it by 2 over Spain. Will they be able to delight the home crowd here tonight? They'll be the second team out through the sections, so they'll know exactly what they need to do. Toni will ride in sections 1, 2 and 4 for Spain. Miquel Gelabert in sections 3 and 5. 4 of these 5 sections are doubles. So section number 1, for example, is being completed in the round 1 and round 2 direction, and the riders have just 1 minute to complete each of these 5 sections, remember, rather than a total time for the whole lap. So Toni completing the round 1 direction that saw him take a mark right at the start of the evening, has now got to complete the round 2 direction. He's used half of the time in the first half of the section, so he's on target. But there's no doubt about it, the difficulty level is raised quite significantly simply because of the time element in this grand final. Toni clean so far. He's tight on time, but he's rushing through well. 10 seconds still remaining. Toni is through in section 1, clean with 6 seconds to spare. Spain remain on 11. Couldn't afford to drop too many marks, knowing that France are already ahead. Spain just need to keep it clean and hope that France are unable to do the same. Alexandre Ferrer lining up for section number 1. Cleaned there by Toni and immediately it's an uncomfortable start for Alexandre Ferrer. And he takes a mark there for footing. Uses it. Oh, and a right foot goes down as well. That's 2 drop marks. That was certainly unplanned. 1 drop mark already, and as Ferrer seemed to collect himself, he lost another. A nervous start then for France, who are already on to 11, the same total as Spain. They've conceded their advantage. They wouldn't have been expecting to have an advantage coming into this final anyway, to be fair. Ferrer has used half of the time in the first direction, probably used a little bit more of the time element than he would have wanted to in the round 1 direction. Leaves him up against it here in round number 2. Already a runner-up with France here in Nice in 2015 and 2016, aiming to go 1 better with the French national team this time around. 2 marks already conceded by the Frenchman. That's a 3rd, who cannot afford to drop any further marks now. Ferrer is out of the section, down he goes. And there's the klaxon that sounds anyway. He was going to run out of time in that one. He tried to rush it through in the latter stages, and because he'd already accrued 2 marks, 2 more meant a fail for Alexandre Ferrer. Spain lead it now by 3 after section number 1 with 4 sections remaining. Second consecutive ride for Toni Less pressure on Spain now after gaining 5 marks on France in section number 1. This is a repeat of section 2 from round number 2. Toni cleaned this previously. Benoit Bincaz will be riding this section for France next time out. Top rider from each of these nations going head-to-head. Single drop mark there for leaning for Toni so that will move Spain onto 12. That could be an opportunity for France to get one back. We know this section is possible to clean. We've seen James Davil do it in round number 2, as did Toni previously. He couldn't do it this time around. First drop mark of the final for Spain, who move on to 12 overall. France on 14, remember, after a failure for Alexandre Ferrer in section number 1. Benoit Bincaz next up. makes the first step look easy. But it's this second step, the descent and then this second step, that's been catching riders out. Toni Bou conceding a mark for leaning. Benoit Bincaz aiming to go clean to pull back a mark on Spain after this one, section number 2. Bincaz made it through this section in round 2 with just a single drop mark in what was a sensational performance from France. He's dropped a mark though for leaning this time around. So that means that the status quo is maintained in this one, section 2. France still 3 marks in arrears of leader Spain. Benoit Bincaz needs to match Toni Bou in the remainder of this section 2 now. The technical part of the lap. Oh, he's got it wrong! Down goes Benoit Bincaz. A second successive failure, and in a section that he'd completed earlier on in the night as well. That is a real disaster for France, who had kept it close throughout the evening here tonight, but now have 7 marks to make up and only 3 sections in which to do it. The tide has turned against them in this grand final. Wonder whether nerves have settled in for the French team. Miquel Gelabert now will ride in sections 3 and 5. This one, section 3, first in the round 2 direction and then in the round 1 direction. Miquel Gelabert failed at this very moment in round 2, if you remember. He failed this step. So there is still hope for France. If Miquel Gelabert makes an error here in section number 3, the round 1 direction was straightforward for everyone. Gelabert has done it in the first direction, now in the second, that in round number 1 was the easiest section of the lap. So Gelabert should have no great problems getting there in terms of time. Does need to rush a little bit. 15 seconds still on the clock for Miquel Gelabert. The time ticking away, 1 minute per section. But Miquel Gelabert is through. 52 seconds to complete section number 3. Spain still on just 1 mark from 3 grand final sections, and the pressure is now on France. Alexandre Ferrer lines up for section 3, and he must complete this section to keep this X-Trial alive. He's already dropped 2 marks, 1 for leading, 1 for footing. In fact, he's taken another. He's now on to 3. Any further drop marks for France, and Spain will be champions in the 2018 X-Trial of Nations. Alexandre Ferrer under pressure. Will Spain win it in the sections, or will France lose it here in section number 3? Alexandre Ferrer. Oh, he's taken a mark for footing. Spain are champions in 2018. Disappointment for France. The atmosphere has taken a turn in this grand final because the French fans were sure that their riders could finally end the winning run of Spain, and it's not to be. Into section number 4 now. The remainder of this lap is just for pride. Section 4 in the round 1 direction, added to section 5 in the round 1 direction. Toni Bou was clean in both of these sections previously, but now they're merged together, and the time element may change things slightly here in section number 4. 5 sections for this grand final, so no opportunity for France to get back on terms with Spain, who will be celebrating yet another win in this competition. And Toni Bou will be receiving yet another FIM gold medal. Bou aims to make the leap on the back wheel. He does make the leap on the back wheel, but then he slips out of the section. So it's a failure for the record in section number 4, but I don't think Toni Bou is too concerned about that. And the celebrations can now begin for Spain. Bou always prefers to celebrate in and at the end of a completed section, rather than the actual moment that Spain had won, which was when Alexandre Ferrer failed in section number 3. Benoit Bincaz now into section 4. Can he go better than Toni Bou? He dropped 2 marks in these 2 sections combined in the previous stages of competition, back in round number 1. Bou failing then in section 4. France with an opportunity to make this scoreline look a little less emphatic. After section 3, Spain had dropped just 1 mark, and France a maximum 15 from the same 3 sections. Bincaz has got the crowd behind him, no doubt about that. The French fans have gradually raised their pitch throughout the night, with a climax at the end of round number 2 when Ferrer and Bincaz were both absolutely superb in sections 5 and 6. It's fallen apart for them and unravelled early in the grand final. Benoit Bincaz then, can he get through the section that Toni Bou just failed? He makes the decision to drop down. He's going to go for the step rather than to try and leap. Well, if Bo couldn't do it by leaping, then Bincaz knows this is his best chance, but instead he fails. It's a 5-mark score for Benoit Bincaz, a 4th consecutive failure for the French team. The klaxon sounds moments after Bincaz's failure, so there was no way he was going to make it through there. Now on to the last section of the night. Current scoreline for the record, Spain on 17 and France on 29. Miquel Gelabert, who completed this section in both round 2 and round 1 direction earlier on tonight, now has to do it in both directions in the final. Was clean in section 3, his only other section for tonight's grand final. Maximum of 3 sections to be taken by each rider in each stage of the competition. So Miquel Gelabert has very much had to play his part here tonight with 3 sections in rounds 1 and 2 and 2 sections in the grand final. He hasn't disappointed. Aside from that failure in section number 3, he's been excellent here this evening. Section 5, Miquel Gelabert, still clean, good on time as well. He's got time to enjoy it. 53 seconds, completion of section number 5. His 2nd clean of the grand final, Spain's 3rd clean of the lap. And the final total for the Spanish team here tonight is 17. France already on 29. Benoit Bincaz aiming to end on a high though. France haven't got through even one of these grand final sections. Benoit Bincaz aiming to become the first to do so. Ex-trial world number 4 lost the possible 3rd place ranking by just 4 points at the final round, despite recording a 2nd podium finish of 2018. He's a nearly man again here tonight, returning to the silver medal position with France. But after round 2, the French team would have fancied their chances of gold. It's a drop mark for footing. Bincaz using his left foot to steady himself. The last section of the night here in Nice, the last section of the extra campaign. Will it end in completion for Benoit Bincaz? It certainly looks as though it will, but it's a lot tighter on time for him than it was for Miquel Gelabert. Bincaz needs to rush late on, he does so. 59 seconds, less than a second to spare for Benoit Bincaz, but France finally get through their first section of the grand final to end the lap on a total of 30 marks from 3 phases of competition. So an emphatic victory margin in the end for Spain, who outperformed France by 15 marks in the final to recover their 2-mark deficit and win in familiar style. But a great effort from the hosts, particularly in round number 2, where they finished out on top. The remainder of the team somewhat isolated in the knockout stages. Germany and Italy dropping out of contention on the opening lap, and Great Britain slipping back in 3rd in round number 2.
L'Angleterre, je pense. Est-ce que l'Angleterre peut venir nous retrouver, s'il vous plaît? James Saville et Jack Price, s'il vous plaît.
Congrats to the French and the Spanish. They was riding just a little bit better, and yeah, they were stronger than us on this occasion. But I think from our side, we're happy with the performance, and we worked well as a team, and we give 100% like always.
A very good night for us. We were very close to victory today, having been leaders after round 2. The sections were very difficult, and Toni and Miquel were able to use that to make the difference on the last lap. But we are very happy anyway. Both of us have ridden well. The French riders rode very well and put on a lot of pressure, especially on the first 2 laps, but in the final as well. I'm very grateful to Toni for the title. He helped me a lot in taking it. He helped in all of the sections. Riding with him is very easy, very calming. It's a real delight. I've always wanted to win a title. This is the first, and I hope to repeat it. A creditable effort from France to raise the roof in the Palais Nikaia in round 2 and put in a genuine challenge to the dominance of favourite Spain. But surviving their mid-event scare, Spain emerged victorious for a 12th consecutive season and now boast a 6th different gold medalist in the competition, with Miquel Gelabert, as well as a 7 times Ex-Trial of Nations winner in Toni Bo.
up.
Total at the end of round number 2. 9 marks at the end of 2 rounds. What Alright. Toni Bou's going to drop another mark. Toni Bou is down! Incredible pressure now for all 4 of these riders. 2 from Spain and 2 from France. Biggest moment of his career, and down he goes! Oh, and it's a failure for Benoit Bincaz.